Recently, I watched and finished the first season of the anime Overlord. Usually I'm a seasonals kind of guy, but lately I've found the time to actually watch some non-seasonals. Overlord was one of my first picks, mostly on a whim. I saw that it had 4 seasons out, and I figured I should give it a second try. Because I have tried watching this once before, but there is a boring arc in the middle that has some characters I just don't care for, and I ended up dropping it. This time, though, I was able to power through its first season in just a handful of days. We'll get to if it was any good, but first I'd like to talk a bit about the show's creation. The anime is based off a manga/light novel of the same name. That light novel started publication in July 2012, while the manga started in November 2014. Both are still going as of making this video. The original creator of the light novel and manga is Kugane Maruyama, who hasn't really done anything else but the Overlord series. This season was made by Studio Madhouse and directed by Naoyuki Ito. It eventually aired in the 2015 summer season. You probably know Studio Madhouse for its work on Death Note, and you might know Naoyuki for his work directing the No Guns Life series. On my anime list, this season of Overlord has a 7.92 out of 10, and it's the 72nd most popular anime on the site. If you want my numeric take on Overlord, it's somewhere between an 8 or a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good, but it's not a classic. It's a fantasy action-adventure isekai with an anti-hero protagonist, where a guy gets isekai'd into a game that he loves. Let's go through each of these elements. Starting with fantasy. The most unique thing about the world of Overlord is that the people in the world know about things like tiers of magic that sound very video game-esque, but they take them so seriously. Characters will say things like, "My god, that's 7th level magic!" But they say it with so much conviction that it didn't really bother me too much. After all, they are living in a video game world, whether they realize it or not. Next is the action. The action looks good. It's not great, but it's good. Personally, I get more out of the strategy behind many of the fights and the reasons for characters fighting than the actual visual action itself. In many anime, there is an over-explanation of the fight itself. Characters look on and say, "Oh my gosh, he's using the big bungus technique." It really ruins the flow of the fight, especially if you already know what the big bungus technique is and why that's a big deal. Because you're like, just let me see these characters fight. In this show, there's a bit of that, but truly it is an acceptable amount. Characters only cut into explanation when there is a real gray area on what is happening. The talking really made me feel like I was getting insight into the fight. This is also balanced by the fact that there are many times when things happen and it doesn't cut into a character's explanation because the show figures you can understand what is happening. It's almost like the anime respects my time and intelligence. Incredible. Next, adventure. The adventure in this show is alright. It's not like other isekais where the character already knows everything they need to know about the world. The world the MC is taken to is mechanically similar to the game he once played, but much of the geography and people are different. This means the MC can still learn things about the world with its audience, which is nice. The world isn't amazing. We certainly aren't seeing Sabakui Bisco's levels of uniqueness in this world. No, it feels like another light fantasy world you've probably seen in many other shows and games before. It's just alright. Next, the isekai aspect. The lore behind this isekai might be one of my favorites. Basically, this guy played a game for many years and was the head of a group of about 40 players. But they all slowly left the game behind to do other things, leaving only our MC to walk the halls of their incredible guild building alone, only surrounded by the guild's NPCs. Eventually, the game loses enough players that they announce they're going to shut it down for good. But instead of the game ending for our main character, it keeps going, and he can't log out. The NPCs become real, and he's got to deal with being isekai'd. The number one thing about this setup is the nostalgia the NPCs and the MC share. The NPCs love our MC. He's stayed with them through everything. He's the last guy who just never left them. But both he and they look back on fonder days being surrounded by even more friends. These NPCs love their leader and treat him like a king they have undying loyalty to, as he tries to go and make the guild great again. It's sort of touching in a strange way. It's probably my favorite aspect of this show. Finally, let's talk about this anti-hero aspect. Now, anti-hero might not be the best term to use here, because the MC is often heroic. He does save the day quite a few times. But much of his motivation is purely for himself and his guild's NPCs. That does lead him to be heroic, but it's clear that if he thought genocide would help him and his own out, he'd pretty much do it. But he mostly realizes that being an evil villain to everyone doesn't really help him in the long run. The MC gets like this because the character he became in this new world is an undead skeleton who, unsurprisingly, has little emotion. Sometimes it feels like the actions he takes are him attempting to cling onto his humanity, though the show never comes right out and says that. He always rationalizes it as, being evil doesn't work out in the long run. I don't have much else to say about this show. It's pretty good, definitely better than most seasonals, but it's not something I'd consider classic. Its art style it's okay, but I think the thing people like most about this show visually is the main character's character design. It's just so bold and dominating. If you want to watch Overlord, it's currently streaming on Crunchyroll, Funimation, Hulu, and Netflix. That's about it. I'll see you guys tomorrow on my Discord server for Gamer Mania Monday. Link in the description. Have a good one.